From you've lost what little of it you have left to your rediscovering of it in places you would have never thought to look. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm Jason Burns.
And I'm Danny Nucci, and this is the What the Hell Did You Just Say podcast?
I don't know. You might have to play it back in really slow motion because I felt a lot of pressure getting that one out.
I mean...
I've had way too many cups of coffees today.
I was going to say, well, maybe it just felt like, somewhere I'm going to have to look for my sanity is the message that I got listening to.
Yes.
I've lost my sanity somewhere.
And if you can't find it, it might be in a place you never thought to look.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I love that we went through the definitions with our guest, Chris Bauer, of True Blood, and he's in Fellow Travelers, and I saw him in Henry Johnson, the new David Mamet play with Shia LaBeouf, which he was unbelievable in.
And everybody always, no matter who I ever talk about in terms of the greatest shows of all time, Dwyer always comes up, which Chris was also on.
I didn't want to ask him. Unfortunately, Andre Braugher has died way too young, and he did a wheel. That's a series of episodes on Brooklyn Nine-Nine. But I didn't want to bring up I don't know, tragedy. Really, we lost a really good one,
special one. And what everybody says, a special person as well. So Yeah, but it was great talking to him, and as the listener will witness, he is a deep, intense, cool dude. One of my favorite people, Chris Bauer. You look terrific. I'm sorry the audience isn't going to get to see it, but you look fantastic. You're painting a nice picture, though, Danny.
He looks great. The guy looks great.
He does look great. And his voice sounds great.
Nobody's going to ever get to see me look good. It's not in the cards.
I disagree.
By the way, no, it's
Chris,
true.
That mustache and heels, you could never not look good in that mustache.
He's so obsessed with the mustache and heels that he wanted the topic to be mustaches.
I just wanted us to talk about mustaches for an hour.
That's how much he wanted. That's how much he loved that mustache.
When we first started this podcast, I had a mustache and then I shaved it, and you were so mad that I shaved it.
Yeah, look. Well, I thought it looked good on you because you're eccentric and whatnot.
My wife did not, though. Speaking of being eccentric, Chris, this has been in my head all day, which is Bauer. I haven't been able to get rid of it all day long. It's just been haunting me. So
yeah, well, I just caught that like the flu, dude. That's gonna be in my head now.
See, it's just gonna bounce around. Well, let's get started with I'm gonna share a fun story because you have a name that is similar to is exactly like an author. So when I first got into the industry about 20 years ago, I was with William Morris. And I sold a project, and suddenly everybody wants to start being in business with you, right? So I'm at a party, and everybody is coming up to me and they're saying, "Hey, you want to do business together?" And it's like I'm getting these like deals in the middle of the party until finally somebody says, "Oh, how's CAA going?" And I said, "I'm over at William Morris." And the guy said, "Oh, you went over to William Morris. Did you bring your client list?" And I learned that there was an agent at CAA that had the name Jason Burns, and I'd been like accepting his clients all night long. So have you ever been confused and or discussed about with author Chris Bauer, who does like a bunch of mystery
I've
books?
Never been confused with the author Chris Bauer, but I'm aware of the author Chris Bauer. In fact, we've had a little bit of contact, and I'd love to read.
Oh, cool.
I would love to read a book or two of his and plan on it after I finish Ulysses and the Shakespeare canon.
So you have a list too that's never going to get read.
I don't just have a list. I have a cabin that I haven't bought yet where I'm going to do all this reading.
Where the library is going to be.
Ooh, with a pipe,
books and a rocking chair. But don't worry, I'll get to it. You know what I mean? The weird thing about that is in 1988, I dropped out of college and I moved to LA, and it was not under good circumstances. So I kind of did an intuitive 20-year-old version of the witness protection program. And I changed my name from Mark, which is my legal first name, to Chris, which is my legal middle name. And all of the wreckage that Mark Bauer had anything to do with was left in San Diego.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
A refresh.
Los Angeles, how do you do? My name is Chris Bauer, right? So since then, I have run into so many fucking Chris
Chris
Bauer.
Bowers?
I've never met a single Mark Bauer in my career, but we got Chris Bauer, the author. When I did True Blood, there was an actress, a great actress on it named Kristen Bauer. And then there's an old theater actor from the arena stage, legend, named Richard Bauer,
Who goes by Chris?
who had a son named Chris, who's also an actor.
So wait, so in SAG, are you Mark Christopher Bauer?
No, I'm Chris Bauer, but I called SAG because I got my SAG card when I was 1970. I wasn't even 4 years old yet. And I called SAG when I did this and said I'd like to change my name from Mark to Chris. And the first lie I had to tell
I love the first lie. There have been many since.
The first lie as Chris Bauer, not as Mark Bauer.
In those days.
In the early 70s when you were 4?
Well, no, like in the 80s when I changed my name, I didn't even drink coffee yet. But the lie started as soon as I walked out the front door. So people said, why'd you change your name to Mark? And I said, well, I'm trying to be an actor. And there was already a Mark Bauer in SAG. And they said, oh, okay. I just left out the part that it was me.
Sure.
I was the one who was
that you were the Mark Bauer in SAG?
Yeah.
Oh, I like that. I mean, there's a movie pitch in there too. That's what.
Hold on. So you started acting. I didn't realize because Chris and I, not so long ago, we had unbelievable barbecue in Atlanta, which was just fantastic. And I was literally picking his brain because I didn't really know much about him. And he told me the whole sort of, origin story of Chris Bauer, actor. But wait, I didn't know. I don't remember this part where you had a SAG card at 4 years old.
Yeah, well, the thing is, people always say, were you a kid actor? And I said, no, because acting had nothing to do with it. I was a kid and they pointed a camera at me. But, it's like I got my first job right before I turned 4 years old. It was a commercial. So I grew up in LA in the San Gabriel Valley, which in those days might as well have been Oklahoma in terms of its relative.
Which city in the San Gabriel Valley? There's a few.
For Alhambra first, and then
sure, Alhambra.
Yeah, my mother's from Alhambra. My dad is from Lincoln Heights, and we, when I was born, that's where we lived. And anyway, she put me in the car like a bag of groceries one day and took me to some lady smoking cigarettes with big glasses.
He's fantastic.
And she basically said, "Be cute, and you'll get a toy." And I want you guys to know that that's my entire career.
I was going to say. That's the whole thing, isn't it?
So wait. You
basically adapted that for the rest of your career.
I haven't changed at all, man. That's my one move.
You said you left college and ran away to LA. So you ran back to LA.
Yeah. I mean, but this time, listen, when you have Fs in every single class, and you can't even explain why. The phone call home is way better when it's, hey, I've decided this college thing isn't for me. I want to pursue my dreams of being an actor. People can get behind that. If you call and say, I came to, and there's holes in all of my dorm walls, and no one will talk to me here, and I'm not sure what to do. It's a harder mission to rally behind. So.
Sure. It's harder to get people on board and go, oh, we understand. That's great. Okay, I understand, Chris.
Yeah.
That's hilarious. So then at what point, because I don't remember this, at what point did you go, I'm going to study acting, or I'm going to be an actor, or I'm going to try to pursue acting? Was it when you went to college, or were you doing it in high school?
I did it. I was one of those jocks. I played football, and then I.
Where did you play?
What did
Linebacker?
I play?
Yeah.
Offensive line.
Yeah. Guard, tackle, center.
Weak side tackle.
Sure. Very nice.
And we had a freak program. We ended up the number 1 ranked team in California.
Which, by the way, is no joke when you're competing with those San Francisco and those Oakland and those, Walnut Creek schools where,
That's
there's,
right.
yeah.
That was because we moved from right before junior high, we moved to Northern California. So I ended up going to high school in Northern California, Miramonte High School. We played in the Oakland Coliseum, and it was a complete, we were the last team. I don't know if you know any of this, football minutia, but De La Salle is a huge program up there. And I think for a while they had a 190 game winning streak or something like that. We were the last team to beat them before that streak started.
Anybody from your team go pro? Anybody keep going?
One guy played professional baseball. And
Smart.
everybody else,
It's a good move.
everybody else, followed the track of those who peaked too early. Like there were a lot of scholarships and most guys didn't even finish out their scholarships.
So you weren't in theater at all in high school? You were just you're just a football guy? Yeah, Chris Bauer. Mark Bauer. Mark Bauer, right tackle. I'll fucking kill you.
Yeah, but look, listen, who doesn't say when they were in high school, I was an outsider, I didn't really fit in, you know what I mean? That's absolutely how I felt, but it's kind of true because, Danny knows this, I've never had much of an actual self. I fabricate something as a means to an end, whether it's raising children or staying married for 27 years.
This is how he survives in the world.
That's right. So
you get the toy, and you do the job. That's the thing.
Back in those days, especially as a teenager, I mean, it was, I certainly didn't feel like I was a jock. I didn't feel like I was a nerd. I didn't know where I fit in. A whole bunch of reasons for that. But I did like the idea of performance. I liked, or did I like the idea of attention? I'm not sure.
But there's some of that in football, right? You do, you're flexing after a play, doing something important, and everybody's watching you.
Not only that, but football to me is an incredibly applicable template for doing theater because you have your cast. Everybody has a role. To the degree that everybody plays their one role, the best they can, the show is good. And that is what I loved about football. It's like I knew, and I was good. I got recruited, and there was, some. I would never have been played in the NFL, but I could have kept playing. I loved that there was about 3 to 5 square feet that I was in charge of, and I was going to either move a body to this side of that square or to that side. And if I did it the way I like to do it, it would be percussive and loud and very personal.
I've never heard it framed that way, but I love it.
Well, I also just accidentally again described my whole career.
The same thing. There's themes here. I love it. I freaking love it.
It's wild how it's coming up. Anyway, when football ended, there was a drama class. I took it. I mean, I've read so many people I know have this exact same.
When you say it ended, Chris, you mean the season ended and you're still in school?
Yeah, the season ended in December. There was a whole semester left of school, so I took drama. I auditioned for the play. I did a monologue from Caddyshack. I got cast as the lead in the play, which was Our Town. I think I pretty much only read my lines, but there were a lot of them, so that's all that mattered. But by the end of that, I felt a kind of comfort and a flow, and like I was aligned with something that didn't require, ironically, any artifice. It didn't require, I didn't feel like I was full of shit. So that was when the seed was sort of planted, and but I had already picked a school that didn't have much of a theater program, and I did what I could there. I lasted 2 years at the University of San Diego and did a few plays while I was there.
Is that the Aztecs? Is that UC San Diego?
No, that's San Diego State. San Diego State is the Aztecs.
Oh, okay.
UC San Diego is where the people who can do math go.
Sure.
I went to the University of San Diego where the cats who have a 2.0 can go.
Is that the one where the beach is? Is that the one on the beach? Near the beach?
It's pretty close to the beach.
So you didn't take theater in San Diego. This is when the wheels fell off and you decided to move back to LA?
Yeah, I mean, I took what I could. There was like 3 classes. And then I did, you could do a musical or a play. I did a musical in the spring. I did a play, the following year. And a couple of independent studies, that's the ultimate major for me.
Independent study? Because you don't have to deal with people?
And also I'm an expert in everything. So I already got good grades. You know what I mean?
There's that. Yeah, you got that going.
But I was not cut out for it. I absolutely was behind in terms of having any authentic connection to reality, frankly.
Which we will get into later.
We'll get into that because I've made, 0 progress on that front.
So this move to LA, so CB, so this move to LA, you're like, it was really kind of a shot in the dark because in essence you had caught the fever when you had done the play, right? So you had the fever, and so you're like, so when you moved to LA and the wheels fell off, were you like, no, this might actually be a thing?
Well, what happened was I had the fever, but I didn't know it. It was in my blood, and in the summer before, the following semester that I ended up dropping out of, I applied to be an apprentice at the La Jolla Playhouse, and it was a program where you took classes in the morning, then you worked on a play in the afternoon or in the evening.
Which is a prestigious playhouse and just outside of San Diego.
Yeah, who knew? I didn't. All I knew was if I got in, I would not have to pay my rent because my family would be supporting me doing something.
It's amazing, isn't it? It's always just the seconds and inches, and if I had turned left or turned right, I'd be doing something else. That's so funny.
I go do this apprenticeship, and I never show up, to the classes or any of that, and I half-ass
You
it.
sign up but don't go is essentially what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, I just that was me then, and I was not a bad kid, but I just was just profoundly untethered. I wanted to be at the beach all the time. I wanted to be.
You were a surfer, right? That's
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. That was where I thought, I was most myself. But really, I kind of wanted to get hammered and meet different girls every other day, and the beach is the perfect place to do that. Well, so one day I go to I decide to show up one of these days. I was a little bit late, and the guy who ran this apprenticeship pulled me aside. He said, "Can I talk to you for a second?" I said, "Yeah." He said,
Oh, you're fucked.
basically, he said, I'll never forget what he said. He looked me in the eye and he said, "You're doomed."
Whoa. Just right out of the gates, he just came in hot like that?
Yeah, he was like, "You're doomed." I said, "What?" He
Wow.
said, "You're doomed. You don't show up, you don't care, and you lie." And I said, "You don't know anything about me."
You don't know me.
I'll never forget I told this guy, "Here's why I don't show up, bro. Because I have to paint houses from 5 o'clock in the morning to 10 o'clock in the morning so I can get the money together to pay for these classes. So every time I miss a class, it's because I got to pay my own way here. You have no idea what it's like to be me." And he smiled and he said, "Like I said, you're doomed."
Oh my God.
Because I was fucking lying. I was completely full of
I'm painting
shit.
houses and I love that story. Did you come up with that in the moment?
Yes.
That you already had the gift of improvisation.
Improv
Boom.
gene, yeah.
By the way, you probably believed it when you were saying it to him.
Every great decision I've ever made, I came up with in the moment, by the way.
And he was saying this to Mark Bauer, yes? That's
Yeah.
this was-
Yes. Yes.
Speaking of Mark Bauer.
By the way, Mark Bauer was doomed. Okay, which is
Sure,
totally
Mark Bauer
fucking
was.
bad to leave him behind. Anyway, I'll never forget it. It was like he got in there.
Ooh, it's like that episode of Brady Bunch. Mom always says, "Don't play ball in the house," and it's floating around.
It was so true, and what a great, what a great reference because TV was the thing that made the biggest difference in my moral point of view, or what it was like to be a man, or what is a family. Because I felt like I was raised on TV, but I so that changed my psychic experience of myself because I knew he was right. And I gotta tell you, if we had many hours, the amount of coincidences and the amounts, here's just the latest one. I decided when I left then that I had to be honest with myself and admit how much I love doing this, admit that I had no idea how, and I had no work ethic. So I had to start from ground zero and build all of the above, which led to me doing a scene in a little showcase that they had. And I did a scene from Sexual Perversity in Chicago by David Mamet. I didn't know who David Mamet was. I didn't know how to act, but I did the scene, and all these actors who were there doing a play at the Playhouse, one of whom ended up being an incredibly influential guide in my life later. They came up to me and they said, "How long have you been doing this?" And I said, "Yeah, blah, blah, blah." And they said, "You could do this. You could do this for a living." So doing that scene is what lit the spark. And 2 weeks ago, I just finished a film with that same author. And the amount of energetic integrity in my life that has been present since that man told me I was doomed is inexplicable. It's just impossible to attribute to anything other than there must be a kind and loving, benevolent presence in my life that it's my responsibility to
Oh,
honor.
there must be, because I want you to tell the story of how you ended up at Yale Drama School.
Same deal, man.
I just because it was not based on your work ethic or your ability to make moves.
To a degree, it was. Here's how. I don't know if I told you this part of the story. Briefly, and by the way, that man who told me I was doomed, years later, I was doing a play at Steppenwolf Theater and I ran into him in a bar. And I gave him,
He had moved to Chicago at this
he had
point?
moved to Chicago and he was running something at DePaul University. And I said, "Do you
Run
remember
into
me?"
him 1,500 miles away. That's crazy.
I was like, "I was doomed."
Having been an actor at this point and not doomed, by the
Yeah.
way.
And I gave him the biggest hug and said, "Thank you so much," because he altered the course of
Oh,
my
that's
life.
so
Did you
great
tell
that
him
you
you
were able
weren't
to
ever
see
painting
him.
houses? Does he know that?
Yeah, he knew it as I was saying it. There was no need. So he also is the one who said, "Okay, well, if you want to take this seriously, you have to train. And if you want to train, you go to the best place you can. And what are those places? NYU, Juilliard, Yale, ACT in San Francisco." And for a year or two, I kept trying to get into all those places. I didn't even consider Yale because I had dropped out of college. Juilliard would accept you because it was a BFA. Same with ACT. And I do these auditions. I did not know how to audition, and I was completely on my own, and I was essentially invisible and totally unnoticed. But I kept reading plays, poems, essays, anything. It was my lifeline. I started to educate myself essentially in that sphere of art, performance, theater.
And where did that curiosity thing came from, Chris? I mean, obviously it was your connection to the work that had sparked you, but what was it that sort of kept you going and in that direction? When obviously you weren't, it wasn't like turning into work at that point.
Well, it was real. I broke through to a kind of an implanted vocational desire to be an actor. And I describe it that way because from that day forward, it wasn't about being famous. It wasn't about being special. It wasn't about attention. It was about knowing what the fuck I was doing. It was like I instantly understood how almost mystical that the level of talent is in all the performers who had affected me.
Do you think those actors coming up to you at the Playhouse after the reading that you did and telling you, how long have you been doing this? Was that a boost to say, holy shit, I can really do this because these people who are doing it are telling me I'm already doing it?
All I know is it felt good, but I don't remember thinking I knew it, or I was like, "Oh, that feels good." It's like, when you're building yourself from essentially, post Big Bang, like I was everywhere. The compass point started to be what feels good and what feels bad. And then good and bad started to be like what feels authentic, what feels fake, what feels difficult, what feels easy. And I started to mix difficult and easy. The things that were difficult were the things I started to be more attracted to, like discipline, like, showing up, like responsibility. Years, by the way, before I was able to do any of those things, but that's when they
Well,
appeared.
you were probably doing those in football, right? Those are all the same things you needed to do there.
I would like to say so, but I told my coach I hurt my back. In fact, my coach said, "Hey," he was from the South. He said, "Hey, Mark, we got to find a place for you to play football." And I said, I remember this dead serious. I said, "Coach, can you do some research and find the easiest conditioning program? That's where I want to play."
Mm.
And I was dead serious. So I'm reading these things, I'm going to plays, I'm the stalker who's, like, writing letters to the actors in the plays because 'cause I'm just trying to build a connection to this world that I don't.
Hold on. You're writing I love this.
Yeah.
You're writing letters to the actors in the play. You're basically fangirling theater actors is what you're saying to me.
Yes. Yes, and, I mean, when I look back, it's like, that was the level of commitment that had been unleashed in me. I went after this like it was my last shot at
At
legitimacy,
life?
at
Yeah.
being a legitimate person, and I think it was.
There's so many parallels, Chris, with the show Barry. I mean, as you're telling, minus the killing people, I hope.
Jesus! I just cannot believe you just paralleled Barry
think
with
about
Chris.
it. He finally finds meaning when he discovers acting, and then somebody tells him, like, "Hey, man, you're doing really good if you train in this." And all of a sudden,
That's a beautiful thing about your stories. Everybody needs an attaboy, man. I don't
Oh
care who
my
you are.
god.
Everybody needs an attaboy. Everybody.
And obviously part of the legacy of that is giving an attaboy whenever it's needed and looking for the people who really are going to bounce from that, you know? And you're right. I love that show, Barry, and I definitely identified a similarity. But you know, to look back and think that my connection more often than not was the 2 hours that I was in acting class, and then whatever paperback collected works of Tennessee Williams, you know, the folio, I forget what they were, the Oxford folio, Shakespeare's, and there was a couple of writers that I really identified with, and I carried them with me everywhere I went. So 2 years later, I'm auditioning for some play or a program or something in San Francisco. I've moved back home with my parents in the East Bay, and I go into the city to do this audition. And as I'm leaving, a guy stops me and he says, uh, "Can I talk to you for a second?" "Sure. I think you're interesting." And I remember going, "Oh, fucking finally. I've always thought that. Nobody has told me that
Finally.
since I did this scene in La Jolla. Oh my God. Okay." And he said, "Would you like to train more?" And I said, "Yeah, I've been trying to audition for these programs and I'm not getting anywhere." And he said, "Would you like to go to Yale?" And I said I would, but I dropped out of college. He said, "That's okay. We accept people who have dropped out of college. You know, your MFA is an IOU basically until you get your undergraduate degree." But he told me, Danny, I can't remember if I told you this, because I went to track him down and thank him because he also altered the course of my life. He said, "You know what I remember? When when I asked you that question, would you like to go to school? You really thought about it and you did a full 360-degree turn thinking about it. And I looked in your back pocket and I saw you had the collected works of Artaud. And Antonin Artaud, you know, is this French surrealist who was a, you know, opium addict and a total anti-Semite, but he wrote these manifestos that I thought that I really identified with. Why? Because they were about being insane. He said, "I saw that in your back pocket. And after I saw that, I said, I got to get this kid into school." And for me, it was such a validation of the idea that whatever I had available to me was what I was keeping contact with until the world came in and gave me a shot. And all I had was that collected works of Artaud that I bought in a used bookstore. I took it. It was like a fucking security blanket. It was my touchstone to where I wanted to go. He saw that, and that's how I got into Yale.
What about Sanity? So let's just define sanity for a minute, if we can, Chris, just in terms of the dictionaries, Webster's. Sanity, the ability to think and behave in a normal and rational manner, sound mental health. That's one of them. The other one that I like is reasonable and rational behavior is sane.
Subjective. Rational is subjective.
Right. Capable of rational thought and decision making, unimpaired by mental illness, drugs, dementia, etc. So basically, everyone I know is insane.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Because if rational thought is the measure of soundness of mind, I cannot wrap my head around how many people are not rational
That's right.
or reasonable.
Here's what I heard from Chris's story, though, is that a lot of people, the industry sort of drives them insane. But in a way, it sort of helped you maintain your sanity. You became more tethered by joining the industry.
I think that's a really accurate observation, and I'm grateful for that. It is true. It's absolutely true. And if it was funny, Danny, listening to those definitions, because I believe we live in a moment where as soon as you try to define sanity, it's a paradox. It's an insane premise to try to define sanity in this day and age, because there are it's a prism. It is so subjective, like Jason said. And so I try to think of it in terms of like, what are some bottom lines, for me? Because I found myself ever since, especially since COVID, essentially, my mantra with my family has been, let's stay alive and let's stay sane. And if we kind of cross the finish line alive and sane, we are the victors. And implicit in that is identifying, well, what's the enemy here? The enemy is, life ending, and the other enemy is a constant invitation to go crazy, to join the mob, to sort of metaphor. Oh, how about this one, dude? This is a real grounding one for me. I don't remember what the context of the joke is, but I think it's a priest and a rabbi, and they're chit chatting, and the priest says to the rabbi, "What do you think of the afterlife?" And the rabbi says, "I'm for it." And I feel like that's how I feel about sanity. Like, I'm all for it, but what is it? So, I remember I like to fish. I remember on a really clear day out in Gardner's Bay.
Where is Gardner's Bay?
Gardner's Bay is like at the end of Long Island, in between like the North Fork and the South Fork. It's the big bay that, um, and I looked down. I think we weren't fishing bluefish, maybe fluke or something like that, but it was so clear, and you could see fishing with squid. You could see the squid on the hook, and I'd watch these fish swim up to the hook, and some of them would look at it and they'd keep going, and then a dummy like me would come along and bite that bait. Next thing you know, it's yanked out of its world. I mean, I always throw fish back, but I'm sure it's a traumatic experience for the fish. That's an example of how I measure my sanity. Do I recognize the difference between food and a baited hook? And that is a very sort of, the application of that is so far, like on an ego level, do I have to have an opinion about it?
Let me answer this for you. No. As a matter of fact, my experience in social media tells me that the answer to that question is not particular to you, but no is the answer to that question, generally speaking.
Yeah, you're 100% right. But isn't modern life an unbroken chain of invitation to bite the hook?
Yes, right.
Without question.
Well, and here's an interesting thing. So I love to fish, but there's a lyric in a song that I love, Chris, and it says, "Never trust a species who captures things just to let them go."
Yeah.
And it always makes me think about, like, I love to fish. I'm mostly a freshwater fisherman, but you go out and you're having the time of your life. And like you said, this thing is just plucked out of the water and like, what the fuck is happening? And then probably a week later, it does the same thing again and thinks another free meal is there and gets captured twice. You capture a bass with multiple scars on its face. It just keeps doing it.
Dude, I know you've caught the same fish within 5 minutes. I've done that. Like,
yeah, right.
like that fish will just turn right around and eat the bait again.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I relate to that.
This is a metaphor. This is for sure a metaphor on
Yes.
insanity.
Right.
Right? What do
Mhm.
people call it? Insanity. The doing the same thing and expecting a different result. Right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. But I mean, I've always, I've reflected on that axiom a lot, and I've always the trouble I've always had with it is
Of course you have an issue with it. Of course you do. Go on. Of course. I don't know why I thought you wouldn't, but go ahead.
all right. Well, I'll just set you straight on this, okay?
Please. Help a brother out.
The doing the same thing and expecting different results, to me, is the contradiction is there is no relationship to the results. When I am in, or when insanity is the state, there are no, it's not about consequences. It's not about results. It's all id. It's all predator mode. It's all appetite. It's all consumptive.
Well, that fish is thinking not that I'm hungry and I should eat that, but I don't know when another one's going to come along, so I have to eat it because it might not be dangling there in a day.
But I feel like human beings lose sanity in the way that we're defining it. Like I think of how many people in relationships, right? How many people in relationships, bad relationships, relationships that they shouldn't be in, all of a sudden cannot remember the bad parts of the relationships or the parts of the relationship that aren't working, and they repeat the pattern of going back to that relationship, thinking that this time those things aren't going to be as bad or as destructive as they are. So you've lost soundness of mind. It's not a rational thought.
But that's also a chemical thing, right? You're especially if you're in that like love period where you're flying high and you're
I'm
seeing.
not talking about love period. I'm talking you've gone past the dehydration period.
Mhm.
And things are not working, right? And things are not working, and yet, and
you think
the
it'll be
issues have
different
all
this
been
time.
discussed.
Yeah.
And you think it'll be different.
Yes, I hear you.
Like you went, I'm tired of taking crumbs. Maybe there'll be a cake this time.
Mhm, mhm.
Yes, and the cards are stacked against us. It's not a fair fight. I mean, the ability to, this is why I like the fish thing, because when I look at it from above, I see physical energy in the fish that does not take the bait. That's different from the other one.
The way they swim. I mean, Jen, are you're not speaking metaphorically? You're talking about an identification.
Fish confidence.
Yes, but it's also filtered through my imagination, so I'm reconstructing the visual metaphor to see.
I like it. I'm in. Sign me up.
But so what do I project onto the fish that doesn't take the bait? A calmness, an objectivity, a sense of a wide view, to Jason's point, that if I don't eat that shrimp, it's okay. There will be another one in a few minutes.
Mm.
In the moments where, to put it in the context of intimate relationships, where it's the ultimate paradox, where you don't earn the treasure from the relationship without transcending certain limits, but the limits become more and more sort of, mysterious of how to access. You can't think your way through pathological behavior.
Well, and going back to that fish, Chris, maybe that person thinks nobody else is going to love me. That next person won't be there, so I'm going to go with this meal, just like the fish does.
By the way, that's the story of my first marriage. An experience with an incredible person, but I vividly remember thinking, well, what if nobody wants to do this with me for the rest of my life? And that's the most important thing to sort of measure here. And that was a big mistake for both of us. But I have so much empathy and so much compassion for all of us, whether it's in context of a long-term marriage or trying to find some oxygen in a peer group. I don't know, I have kids that are, 21 and 24 and 22 and
I do the same thing. I can't fucking remember. I have a 27-year-old and a 20-year-old. I'm like, no, she's not. She's 18. Why do I keep saying she's
22
20?
and 24. I have so much empathy for them and those younger and those older, because the sort of the price of admission in their peer groups is so unbelievably stern and non-negotiable. There's a ton of pressure on them. Whatever it is, I really understand how we can be at the mercy of confusing feelings for facts, or confusing a survival situation for, just a need for a pause. And so sanity for me is doing what I need to do to have my best shot at identifying reality.
I love that. Doing what I need to do
Mhm.
to identify reality for
Yeah.
me. Yeah, it's great.
But do you have that stability every day, Chris? Is that something is easy
No,
to
that's a
maintain?
target. No, he doesn't. I can tell you right now. The answer is no. But I appreciate the target is the same every day, whether you hit it or not, or where you hit it.
All I know is if I don't wake up with that, knowing that that is my deal to police for myself, the chances are really low that I'm going to get through that day without being hoodwinked by a feeling, or confusing, a minor threat for a survival issue. And even if I do get up and try to police it, I'm a human being, and it's going to be easy for me to mistake. It's like, to be totally honest. Back to that thing about, if I'm cute, I get a toy, and that's my career strategy. It has taken me a long, long time to approach having a conversation in a way that doesn't get sort of sidetracked into a performative sense of accomplishment, where me having an impact is the measure of the value. And I have to really deprogram that before I start, because I'll be a slave to it, and nothing authentic will happen.
Yeah, it's like it's an old instinct that you have to sort of be conscious of, otherwise it takes over. We have an audience questioner. I keep calling it an audience question, but I want to call it a listener question, and I think I say that every time. So, audience question is: life is not easy, Chris. Missy L asked this. Life is not easy. I think you've answered this, but please. What part of living and staying the course has been the most complicated for you over the years? Do you want that again?
No. First of all, I want to thank
Missy?
and give
Missy L,
give
yeah.
them a virtual high five about saying life is not easy, because I think if we could all get a little more comfortable with that fact, it'd be a lot easier to recognize that we're all in this together. It's not easy for any of us. Easier for some, but there's dead ends there too. Life is not easy. To some degree, it's out to get us. It's like the second you're alive, life is like, I'm taking things away from you one day at a time. Okay, that's the deal. I think for me, to answer that question, the single greatest hack that applies across the board is to put my physical, imaginative, any aspect of my attention on my exhale, on letting go. Take it off the inhale, take it off the sort of sucking in of what I need, and just keep my attention on what is the wisdom of the exhale, letting go. I like how my body feels at the end of an exhale. And I just feel like in that pause before another breath is gifted to me, I have a chance to meet things fresh and new. And I use that like push-ups. Let's just exhale and let go and start over. I don't mind starting over in life.
I mean, I didn't want to look at the clock, Jason. I'm like, let's keep throwing questions at him, because his answers were so well thought out and felt like they came from pain and experience, and with a tremendous amount of hope and forward movement. I was like, this is great. I love talking to him. I mean, it's one of the reasons that I love him, but still his ability to articulate it and to take a second and think it through and then articulate it, I think is just really cool, man.
I'm gonna steal his approach to life. Stay alive, stay sane. Those are two good mottos
Right?
to
Stay
live
alive,
by.
stay sane.
Mm-hmm.
Or as I like to do is come back to sanity.
Yes.
I don't know how sane I stay, But I do like the idea of when I notice that I am not there to come back to sanity.
Mhm.
And sometimes I need help. I can't really do it by myself sometimes.
It's how you get back up, right? That's what it is.
I mean, I know I seem very well adjusted. I understand, but I'm not.
No, I am not either, and I'm okay with it.
First of all, I need no convincing that you are just left of center over here.
My favorite part about being, questioning sanity all the time is that as a writer, that's where some of the best stuff comes from. So you kind of have to go there sometimes to get the good stuff. At least I've found.
I think
that.
any art. I
Yeah.
think any art you
Yeah.
gotta go there to a certain degree.
Right.
And if you don't at first and it works, I think eventually you're gonna have to do it. It's just part of the evolution. But I may go back and listen to this again just because I want to hear his answers again. I just want to go back and just digest it a little bit more.
This will be one of the ones that I listen to multiple times because I feel like I'll get something different from it every time.
Yeah, depending on where you are in life, it's true. Yeah. So everyone, thanks for listening.
Music by Denny Nucci. Produced and edited by the same two people you heard hosting this show because they have no friends.